Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and this is just going to be a first impressions on the Bozjan Southern Front and the current resistance weapon upgrades that were added in patch 5.35. Now, excuse me if I slip up on my words or anything, but as of this recording, it's 4 p.m. and I've been awake since 1 a.m. and I've been live since 2 a.m. So it's been a day. On top of that, my run of the Castrum Lacus Litore critical engagement, I lost a lot of that footage to some internet issues. So it's been a rough day, but I wanted to get some first impressions out for you guys, as well as start to work on some critical engagement guides, as well as, of course, the Lacus Litore guide, because quite frankly, I think it's going to be really important to get that out as soon as possible, as long as I can get the proper footage and perspectives. But for this, first impressions on the new content. So first of all, I want to start off by saying, just without any spoilers, that the story kind of progresses at an okay pace. It's very akin to the way I remember Eureka kind of going along as we were going throughout the zones, and that there's some quests that feel very piecemeal, very much just kind of pushing us to the next place, and they don't really feel like they advance the story, but it's fortunately supplemented by what I feel are far more impactful cutscenes than we had in the previous Relic, Anima, and Eureka weapon chains. I'm overall much more pleased with it, especially because it's a continuation of the 24-man raid series from back in Stormblood, and it had a really strong entry back in patch 5.25. So without spoiling anything, definitely give it a look-see when it comes to the cutscenes. Pay attention to the dialogue, because there's a lot of little bits in there that I feel like are going to be important for our lore nerds. On top of that, there are actually additional bits of lore that are available in the zones themselves as you go through and you're defeating the various skirmishes and critical engagements. So there is a lot to learn about the land of Bozja, the people who are participating in this content, the NPCs that is, and where it's going from this point on, and we can kind of start to piece that together, but that's for another video. Now, as for the content itself, it has its ups and downs. It really felt to me like they took everything that was the feedback of Eureka, both from the people who kind of enjoyed it and wanted to see it improve, as well as the people who didn't like it at all. And what you get in the end is an experience that definitely feels like they heard the community, but at times almost maybe makes you wonder if they heard people a little too much. Now, when you first enter the Bozjan Southern Front, please make sure you remember to grab your resistance weapon quest. There is actually an additional quest after you actually get access to this instance, and then you can talk to Zlatan to gain another quest to actually start accruing the currency. I guess I should maybe talk about the weapons themselves before I get too far into this. Make sure you do that quest if you're going to go into Bozja right away, but also they made it so that you could do the weapon quests both inside of the Bozjan Southern Front and outside. So if you really don't want to do Bozja, if it's not content you're interested in, then you don't have to do it. They actually basically allow you to do Heavensward fates over in the various Heavensward zones, and then a few dungeon runs, and you're pretty much done with it. In fact, the weapon quest, which I'll do something a little bit more in depth for in the next couple of days, is actually way easier to do outside of the Bozjan Southern Front. So for people who don't want to work on a weapon inside Bozja, you're actually taking the faster choice, which a lot of people thought it was going to be the other way, myself included. They really don't want this weapon series to be like a hyper grindy thing, it feels like. Definitely not like the Eureka weapon, and definitely not like the Zodiac or Anima weapons that have had so much backlash, as well as they've had people who really enjoy the grind. There's been so much backlash over the years about the means through which they ask us to go through these upgrade processes. So they took a very direct route. It's pretty much the same both inside and out. Inside, you're going to be doing various skirmishes to earn items for your upgrades, and if you take the method that is outside, the Heavensward Fate and the dungeons, it's 100% drop rate on those items. So you essentially need 60 Heavensward Fates and the 6 dungeons afterwards, and you're pretty much done. So you've got options. Even if you're doing Bozja, you may want to opt into going to the outside and working on it there. And the good news is it looks like you can work on the weapon inside of Bozja and outside of Bozja simultaneously. You don't have to choose to do one or the other, which was a big question for a lot of people. But quite frankly, you're probably going to be going to the outside because it is that much faster. Once you're inside Bozjan Southern Front, now that we can finally go in there, they're going to introduce you to a ton of tutorials. In fact, they even make you agree that you understand how the content works with a little like 6-page disclaimer about how the different content in there actually functions. And they make you click a box that says, I understand what I'm signing up for. And then you're actually allowed to enter after that. It was pretty funny, I'm not going to lie, but something that I almost wish they do in more pieces of content. Although let's be honest, most people didn't read it. You know. But yeah, once you get in there, you're just going to immediately be thrown kind of into the deep end. They're going to give you a few quests, ask you to maybe kill a few mobs outside or bring them an item from one of the monsters. And as long as you're reading the quest dialogue, they very clearly explain what to do and where to go and how to obtain the things you actually need. They, of course, highlight NPCs that unlock certain features as you actually complete quests in order to unlock them. And so it is very well guided, assuming you're paying attention. It was not uncommon for me to see people who are not paying attention and going, where do I go for this? What do I do for that? I don't understand this. Or just forgetting to get that weapon quest that I mentioned earlier and wondering why they weren't getting any of the drops inside of the zone. Other than that, it's pretty much as we expected. You run around the map, completing objectives around it to spawn critical engagements. Now, the basic fates that you're going to be seeing are called skirmishes, and these are ranging anywhere from collection missions to defense missions to boss missions to just killing a bunch of enemy missions. Pretty much all your standard fate layouts that you can come to expect. And then occasionally, these will spawn critical engagements. Now, certain skirmishes work towards spawning certain critical engagements, though it does look like some critical engagements are spawned from chains of quests, whether it be 2 or 3. We definitely saw some that are part of multi-skirmish chains that lead to critical engagements. Now, when you first start, you're just going to be running around constantly. You know, it's going to be non-stop just doing any of the quests that are available, but you can only access about a third of the map until you hit Resistance Rank 5. Now, as you complete these skirmishes and these critical engagements, you'll gain a resource called Metal, which you can then, when you have enough metal, go to an NPC and it will increase your resistance rank. Now, this doesn't increase your stats. This doesn't make you more powerful in any way. It essentially gates the zone, so if you don't have certain resistance ranking, you can't participate in certain content. Essentially trying to get you to gradually work your way through the zone, build your front line up in order to get to the end goal, which is the critical engagement of Castrum Lacus. Lattice? I can't speak today. The Castrum at the end. Now, once you get to Resistance Rank 5, you're going to be thrown into a ton of quests back to back to back. Now, again, some of them will open up new zones, allow you to attune to Ethernet so you can quickly get around the map. Some of them will be things that advance the story, and some of them are just going to be, almost feels like, why did you make me go do this right now, until it gets explained later. But again, if you're paying close attention to the story, it'll all make sense. By Resistance Rank 8, you'll actually have unlocked the entire zone of the Southern Bozjan front and can participate in any of the skirmishes or critical engagements throughout the map. When you hit Resistance Rank 10, you will gain access to Castrum Lacus Litore, I got it that time, and the max resistance rank is 15, at which point you will have the maximum number of wait for lost actions, which we'll get into in a second, as well as access to every lost action that is available. Now, I've thrown a lot of words at you that you probably don't understand if you didn't do your Rika. I'm throwing skirmishes, critical engagements, but ultimately just call those fates. They are what they are. There's a system for queuing for critical engagements that your party leader can invest in. There's a few things that could maybe be improved in this process, such as if somebody leaves the party while you're queued for a critical engagement, it will actually cancel the queue altogether. So there's a few things here and there that were a little shakily designed, but thankfully critical engagements were so frequent that one of my greatest fears didn't really come true, and that's the feeling of being excluded from content. Now, as more people get to higher resistance ranks, it will probably become more of a problem, but basically, if more than the number of people queuing into a critical engagement queue into said critical engagement, then it goes to a lottery system. It just basically goes completely random in terms of who it actually invites, and then people can even choose to register sometimes after the queue period has actually ended. It's kind of clunky, and I think they'll probably do some improvements to it, but overall I was glad that critical engagements were frequent enough that I never really felt like I was being excluded from something that I really needed to be a part of, except for that any of the solo critical engagements, which I did get to participate in one of them, and I figured out the mechanic just in time to be one-shot by it. So that was an interesting experience that I'm looking forward to getting my revenge on a little bit later. Now, I've mentioned lost actions a bunch of times. These are basically bonus actions that you earn inside the zone by collecting these fragmented memories that you're going to be getting from all sorts of different monsters. Most of them are earned from just the common monsters around, and you might collect them occasionally just from people who drag monsters into skirmishes. But you can also deliberately go out of your way to farm specific monsters to earn specific lost actions. There's even these incredibly powerful star-ranked monsters, which are the rarest and most powerful monster on the map, which will give you some of the more powerful actions when you actually slay them. They are not to be messed around with. I've seen them one-shot tanks almost immediately, and their AoEs are certain to kill almost anyone who gets hit by them. So these are not things to be taken lightly, unless of course you have some specific lost actions that can end those fights quite quickly, if you catch my drift. Now with these fragmented memories, you'll take them and appraise them, and they'll become actions that you can then assign. You're basically given like a weight limit that goes up with resistance rank, like I mentioned earlier, and you can assign all sorts of items and skills. Like for example, in a lot of my footage, I'm using Lost, Protect, and Shell. I can put Protect and Shell on myself or my allies, and it'll reduce physical or magical damage respectively by 10%. I can use these an infinite number of times. They'll persist in my duty actions even if I leave the instance. I can't use them outside, but if I leave and come back in, then they don't get destroyed, which was something that did happen in Eureka. And then I would just bring a bunch of items with me that were exclusive to the zone. There's a lot of ways to make yourself more powerful and break the game in a sense. And this same thing kind of happened in Eureka, where you can do these ridiculous things and it's intended. Don't feel like you're gaming the system in any way. You're just being smart about the way that your actions and your potions and whatnot actually work together. Now, I already mentioned some of the actions that I could use infinitely, like Protect and Shell. There are some more powerful actions that you can use that have a limited number of charges, such as Death, for example, which works on most enemies on the map, but not on any of the more major things around. They can make farming more fragments specifically a good bit easier. There's also actions that allow you to kind of transcend your role, like for example, being a monk that has Cure as an action. You know, if you just want to be someone who helps out a little bit, some jobs can get raises, Arise, which will allow you to resurrect teammates with 100% of their HP. But then you also have the items, which can range from a basic Phoenix down that lets you res an ally, a re-raiser, which lets you occasionally raise yourself, potions that you can use to restore health or MP, even auto potions that will proc over and over again until they maybe get consumed, depending on the other things you're actually combining them with. My favorite items were essences, however. These were basically stances or buffs that would last unless you changed to a job that they didn't apply to, or you left the zone altogether. So you could throw one on, and as long as you were happy with it, you could just keep trucking through the zone the entire time. These would range from things like being able to increase my healer damage by a whopping 80%, or maybe even being allowed to increase my HP, MP, and damage on my healer as well. But then if I were to swap to a tank, those wouldn't work. So maybe I'd want something like Guardian or Skirmisher, which could make me tankier as a tank or make me do more DPS, for example. I'm kind of just spitballing a lot of these. They're very similar to Eureka. A lot of them are just kind of beefed up effects to these same essences or, spirits that we actually had back in that zone. But it gives you a bit of flexibility to do things you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And it was one of my favorite things about Eureka. And I'm glad they've preserved that and actually improved upon it when it comes to Bozja Southern Front. So let's see, I've covered skirmishes, critical engagements to some degree. I've covered the relic items that you can collect in here, and you can collect them at different ranks. A lot of people have been asking me about collecting the relic items inside Bozja. Basically, the zone, as I mentioned, is broken up into 3 sections based on your resistance rank, with rank 8 allowing you to unlock the entire map. All the skirmishes and critical engagements, and even the monsters in the section for resistance rank 1 through 5, those all drop one of the currencies. The ones between resistance rank 5 and 8 in area number 2 drop a different currency, and the ones in the very north area, the final area, those will drop the third currency you need. The fact that you need resistance rank 8 to even consider finishing the Bozjan weapon when you could just go outside and do Heavensward Fates is why that is a lot faster. On top of that, the Heavensward Fate drop rates, like I said, were 100%, and these are not 100% at any point. Now, due to my tiredness, as you can tell, I've stumbled all over this first impressions video, doing my best to keep my cool at times, but there's still a few things we need to talk about before I can wrap this up and actually get some sleep. One of the big ones that I kind of haven't mentioned is that you can level in this area, and it's really, really good. Now, I don't have any first-hand accounts myself because all of my jobs are 80 on my main character, but everyone was just telling me how fast they were leveling, 700,000 EXP from this and 2 million EXP from this critical engagement, and they were leveling really, really fast. So while you will need to be 80 and meet all the requirements to actually unlock the Southern Bozjan Front, which are detailed in the patch 5.35 patch notes, you will be able to, after you unlock it, go in there as a level 71 job and earn experience from the skirmishes and the critical engagements. So if you haven't leveled a job to 80 yet, now might be the time to do it, because you're going to get it done real quick in the zone. And on top of that, it's going to sync you up to level 80 for the entire experience. You're going to be synced to item level 430. So you don't even have to worry about the gear that you have or being weaker than other players. They've got that covered. And it is an awesome system that hopefully gives people the chance to experience their job from 70 to 80 with all their 80 skills the entire time. And I just think that's a good thing to practice. There's even some extra items that I haven't even been mentioning that you can earn. One of them actually being the Bozja earrings. Apparently, if you appraise 1,000 of those fragmented memories that give you the lost actions, they give you Bozja earrings from an achievement. These basically act as aetheryte earrings, which allow you to level faster anywhere, by the way, not just in Bozja. From levels 1 to 80, and then they will in Bozja give you an additional haste effect. But for anyone who missed that pre-order bonus for aetheryte earrings for Shadowbringers, this will be a really big thing for you to pick up. There are some other rewards you can pick up as well, some titles for rezzing people, as well as some other items that probably come from 1v1 duels and things like that. There's lockboxes that have materia, parasols, even a really cool looking mount. There's currencies that you can earn called Bozja clusters, which lets you buy even more things like another mount on top of the one you may already have from those lockboxes. There's all sorts of rewards in here, from leveling to materia to mounts to minions to glam to level. It's just, it's trying to be an all-in-one. And I think that'll hopefully keep it being pretty popular despite its relatively simple gameplay loop in that of, you know, just running around doing skirmishes and critical engagements. As for Castrum, Lacus, Litore itself, I'm going to be doing a kind of walkthrough style video where I take our first clear and I just kind of talk through, you know, what was going through our heads, how we got through it as quickly as possible, and give a few pointers to anyone who may be going in the next day or two. I have mixed feelings about it because it was actually really fun. It's anywhere from, you know, 1 to 48 people. It does scale with the number of people you have inside, but you probably want close to that maximum number to do things reliably, especially in a pickup group when people are still learning it or may not have ever done it before and thus need to start learning it now. The big thing I'm concerned about is it does actually take a decent amount of coordination for certain parts. Otherwise, you either lose out on rewards or you just outright wipe. So I am a little concerned about some portions of the very beginning and the final boss in particular, where the parties have to split up, and if one of them screws up, it's it. It's pretty much over for you at that point. But other than that, I'd say that the checks in there are not anything too strict, as long as you're willing to and just play to the best of your ability. And it was a lot of fun. It's also not super long. At the most, it takes an hour if you were to fail it completely. We completed ours in just about, I think, 40 to 45 minutes, even after wiping a few times. You can resurrect in there. You can wipe and get back up, which just reminded me something else I didn't talk about when it comes to metal that we'll talk about in a second, which means that you have more than one attempt at a boss per time you go into Lacus Litore. It's just going to cost you a little bit because don't forget, when you die and or release from when you die, you lose metal. You don't lose that much metal for dying, but you lose a decent chunk of metal for releasing. You can't lose resistance rank, but it still hurts to come in here, maybe die a bunch of times, lose a few thousand metal, and then either clear it and not get the metal back, or not clear it and just be down a few thousand metal. So bear that in mind when you actually come in here, that dying does incur a penalty. It's just not that massive of one. Now, as you clear bosses and objectives inside of Castrum Lacus Litore, you'll not only gain more time to actually finish it, you'll start off with only 20 minutes, and by the end you'll have an hour total, but you'll also earn an item called a Bozja coin, and you'll earn these per boss or per objective you complete, and this was probably the thing that made me go, really? The most? Because we got 22 coins in a single run, and I thought, okay, 22 coins, we probably need, 100 or 150 coins for an armor piece or something like that. We could have gotten more. We screwed up a few objectives and probably lost like 20 to 25 coins in the process. That being said, we need like 1,000 coins per piece, and we got 22 in that run. And so we are really wondering how much they really intended us to do Castrum Lacus Litore, because that doesn't feel right. I don't think they'll change anything about any of the lost actions or the amount of EXP you gain. People are like, oh, they'll nerf this, they'll nerf that. No, but I wouldn't be surprised to see changes on those coins, because even if they want us to be doing this content for a while, it's 1,000 coins for like a body or a leg piece, and that's absurd when you get like 20 to 45 or something a run. It takes an hour of your time. Not to mention, you can then upgrade those pieces to have an additional +1 haste on them for Bozja itself. They start with +2 and they go up to +3. It feels like they kind of missed the beat. This is the number one thing I think they've missed the beat on in both Eureka, and the one thing I feel like they didn't actually pay attention to feedback-wise, going from Hydatos in particular into the southern Bozjan front, is that the entire point of these zones, where they go out of their way to make all these different rules and let us get all these ridiculous actions, is that you're supposed to be able to make yourself into just these unbelievably powerful just monsters in there. The things you can do with the right setups in there is absolutely absurd. But then you just get haste +3, and it actually screws up your rotation, and you're like, this is worse than I would have thought it was. And all these pieces, they just have haste on them. This has haste, and that has haste. I'm someone who understands when the game has very basic effects on armor in the main game. It's often been something that is balance related, and it has often made sense. Here doesn't make sense. We can already do so many ridiculous things that putting this much effort into getting these coins for this armor to then just get a little bit of haste, it just seems unbalanced in regards to the return on investment for the player, and is the one thing I feel like will come under fire more than anything else in the zone. Now, there are going to be people who don't mind that. They're going to, approach it, maybe beat a boss or two in there, get 5-10, and maybe they enjoy it so much that it doesn't really matter, and they just enjoy going in and having these large-scale raids to clear with friends, and it's a fun experience for them every time. But you still have to consider the reward versus content structure here, and it just doesn't match up specifically for Castrum, Lacus, Litore. As much as everything else in the zone is fantastic with the sheer number of things you can get. You even get a little bit of Phantasmagoria and Allegory, an insultingly low amount, but considering that's not why I'm there, I'm kind of okay with it. But you can tell there are portions of them that really wanted to stretch this content out for people who weren't just leveling as much as humanly possible. And there just seems to be a bit of a disconnect in terms of what they ask the player to do versus what they actually reward them with. And that is my #1 complaint about it, and I suspect we'll be seeing more of those complaints in the days to come. Okay, with that, I think I'm absolutely spent on energy. We'll see, because like I said, it's been a long day. But I'm just going to throw some footage of me doing Bozja over this, some footage of Lacus Litore. Some of my footage for Lacus Litore, despite the lag, actually turned out being okay. But fortunately, some fellow members from my FC have offered to give some footage. Sfia's footage is probably the ones I'll be using the most. Because we were in there and we did that first run together, and it was a good time. So thank you, Sfia, for donating footage for this and what will be the part of the walkthrough video. My headset's running low on battery because it's been on since God knows when. So anyway, I'm going to go maybe start working on that after I get this edited and rendered. And with that, thank you for taking your time to listen to what I had to say about the Bozjan Southern Front. Be on the lookout. We're going to be doing videos on the critical engagements and guides. I know the Red Chocobo one is a big one that a lot of people would like a guide on. We'll be doing a Lacus Litore walkthrough and a formal Lacus Litore guide. We'll be talking about the comparisons between the acquisition of the Relic weapon inside and outside of Bozja, as well as reiterating some of my thoughts placed here. So we are going to be posting about 5 or 6 videos on this throughout the week. So definitely keep an eye on them. On that note, though, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned. I'll see you all in the next one. And until then, take care.